So good morning and welcome everyone. Welcome to everyone in the balconies and on video. It's my great joy and privilege this morning to welcome our guest speaker, Imam Jamal Rahman. Jamal is from Bangladesh originally and came to the West and settled in Seattle in the 1990s. Jamal, by the way, in Arabic is a word, it means beauty. And there's a similar word, Jalal, which means majesty. And then the two together, Jamal plus Jalal, become Kamal. Is that correct? Which is perfection. That's the perfected human being. So Jamal is half of perfection manifest. Yes, of course, very much so, as you'll see. Jamal is an absolute gift to the world. He co-founded the Interfaith Community Sanctuary in Seattle in 1999, and he's been teaching on Islam and on interfaith spirituality since 1992 in Seattle. He is also an adjunct on the adjunct faculty at Seattle University, and starting in 2001, shortly after 9/11, he and Rabbi Ted Falcon in Seattle and another Christian pastor, Don McKenzie, they formed what are called the Interfaith Amigos. And they have been, this rabbi, imam, and pastor have been traveling all across North America and internationally, basically with giving the message of inclusivity and love across all the religions, but in particular emphasizing the Abrahamic faiths, of which they each represent the main three Abrahamic faiths. So it's a very profound ministry that they've been doing since 9/11. And in the course of that, they've written, I think, 3 or 4 books together. Jamal himself is the author or co-author of 7 books, including Getting to the Heart of Interfaith, which I think was their first book that the 3 of them wrote together. And then another one that they wrote is called Religion Gone Astray, which really focuses on the areas where religion sometimes has, not exactly supported its own highest ideals. And they found across the religions, they found 4 areas where religions in common have some work to do. One is on religious exclusivity, sort of holding the idea that this religion is correct and the others are wrong. The second one was in terms of violence, sometimes implicitly advocating violence or somehow being complicit in violence. The third one was in equality, gender equality between men and women. And the fourth one is the whole arena of homophobia. And across their exploration of the religions, they found that these issues are present in each of the religions. This is unusual interfaith work because so often interfaith work is sort of advertising how great my religion is. And here we have these interfaith leaders who've actually not only brought forth the gifts and the brightest that the religions have to offer, but they've also gone into the shadow together and have enabled a very frank and profound conversation around that aspect of religion, which has been a real gift. Jamal has also written beautiful books on Islam, the spiritual gems of Islam, and the sacred laughter of the Sufis, which Cynthia and Garrett and I have been reading this past week and been just really loving that book. Jamal has also presented at 4 of the conferences that Cynthia and I have organized. We call them the Dawn of Interspirituality conferences. First one he came to was in 2011, and then again in 2013 and 2014, and then last year in 2018 he came to the conference that we did in Costa Rica. And at that conference we discovered, because in the process of organizing that conference, we discovered 3, they called them Interfaith Friends in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And this was a priest, a rabbi, and an imam doing a very similar ministry in South America. And they had never met. And so they met for the first time a year and a half ago at our conference in Costa Rica. And then last November, we brought all 6 of them to the Parliament of World Religions in Toronto. And so we had a presentation from the 6 Interfaith Amigos of the Americas, is what we now call them. And next year, we're going to have a conference again in Buenos Aires this time, and all 6 of them will be there, and hopefully some of you will be able to attend as well. So I think without further ado, I will invite Jamal to come up, and he'll lead us in the meditation and then give us the talk today.
Well, first of all, may I say what a privilege it is to be here, to be introduced by these 2 globe-trotting, figures whose work makes such a difference wherever they go in the 4 corners of the world. And what a joy to be in your presence also. I love that wonderful 13th century sage, maybe you know, Rumi. He has this utterance. He didn't write, he was going to a trance and utter about music. He said, music is the sound of the spheres. And all of us have been part of that harmony before. And all this singing, chanting, music keeps our remembering fresh. So thank you once again. I always like to start by being so grateful. There's a clock on the wall there because I'm from the East. And people like me like to speak and speak and speak and speak until somebody begins to snore. That's our cue. But I shall be compassionate watching that clock up there. So today I wanted to say a few words about the heart of Islam. But I want to start by just saying a few basics initially. Islam is a 6th, 7th century religion after birth of Christ, CE. That's something I want to share with you. Number 2, Islam is the religion, and the people who follow that religion are Muslims or Muslims. But in a general way, the word Muslim simply means one who is surrendered to God. So in that sense, everybody is a Muslim really, every spiritual person. Third point, what are the denominations in Islam? Like in Christianity, Catholics and Protestants, 2 broad denominations. In Islam, do some of you know the denominations? Sunni and Shia. Wonderful. You probably know more than 80%. That's pretty good. Sunni and Shia. And what brought about this bifurcation? As always, it's something, if you look at it objectively, it is sad. It's inconsequential in some ways, considering that it has led to so much of difficulties. When Prophet Muhammad died in 632 CE, the question arose, who would succeed him? Not as a prophet, you can never replace a prophet, but as a community leader. One group said it's simple. Obviously, it should be by consensus, democratic vote. Another group said, that makes a lot of sense. But don't forget, we've had a prophet in our midst. It should be by blood lineage. The group who said blood lineage, the ones who said consensus, who are they? You could be, 50% right actually. The ones who said it should be a blood lineage, that's Shia. The ones who said consensus are Sunnis. But today it doesn't matter because you have close to 60 majority Muslim countries. At that time it was a source of dispute, succession. And that has caused difficulties. Who are Sufis? Also very misunderstood. Sufism is not, I repeat, not a denomination as many people think. For example, people tell me, Jamal, you're a nice guy, you're a good person. That's because you're not really a Muslim, you're a Sufi. Sufism is simply a heartfelt aspiration to live the spirit of the tradition. Could be a Sunni or Shia. That's what Sufism is. It is not a denomination. It's a heartfelt aspiration. One last point I want to make. I'm looking at the clock. Bernard Lewis, very famous professor from Princeton, he passed away recently. He said, it's very important to mention this, that just as today, Christianity is a predominant, privileged religion, for 1,000 years, Islam was a predominant, privileged religion. And how do you determine this? He says, for example, during that 1,000 years, if you had asked, who has the largest geographical empire? It was the Islamic Empire. Most strong economically, the Muslim Empire. The strongest military machine, Muslim Empire. And what Muslims like to believe and boast during that 1,000 years, so much of flourishing, advancement in arts, literature, sciences, mystical sciences. But today, if you ask, in which part of the world are people the poorest of the poor, the most illiterate of the illiterate, the largest number of war refugees by a huge margin? It is the Islamic world. Many reasons, but you might say one reason most academicians agree, and those philosophers who ponder on this, is just the way I said it. How did I say it? We were number one, number one, number one, number one. This creates a vibration of arrogance, which leads to ignorance in the leaders who become closed to change, innovations. Is that wonderful insight? We learn from history that we do not learn from history. That applies. Okay, so now I want to get into what are some spiritual insights from Islam which could be of benefit to you. It has benefited lots of Muslims who call themselves Sufis. They follow the spiritual path. I don't know if you have studied Buddhism. Buddhism has 4 noble truths, 8-fold path. Islam has 3 principles and 5 pillars. So I'll go over them but from a spiritual perspective. The first principle of Islam is Islam itself. What does Islam mean? Islam means to surrender to God in peace. But the question is, what are you surrendering? And the Quran suggests you are surrendering your attachment to your ego so that you can bring, as the Quran says, a heart turned in devotion to God. Sufis say life actually doesn't begin till you, in different degrees, you become aware of this great need to become a seeker, to go beyond the hypnotic, patterned trance of our life. They say there are 2 veils that come in the way of us becoming seekers. What are those veils? Health and wealth. When my health is good, or the health of my loved ones, when I have not only financial security, emotional security, all this talk about becoming more Christ-like, Buddha-like, Allah-like, Elohim-like, transforming your ego, opening up your heart, is not only irrelevant, but very, very inconvenient. Until one of those veils are bound to shatter. My parents have died. There's sudden change in circumstances. Then suddenly, sadly, because we humans are unmindful, but in some ways very beautiful, we ask deeper questions of life. What is going on? Why me? But most of all, the Quran says the question most needed is, I need help. I need help, but I need help from a source larger, greater than human personality, than human institutions. That's when life really begins. The Quran has a verse, you come to a stage in your life where the Quran says, say, my life, my living, my prayers, my sacrifice are all for you, my spirit, my God, my divinity. Sadly, I repeat, because we humans are unmindful, it's usually something difficult that comes in our life. Are you familiar with a 14th century poet named Hafiz? Wonderful. Hafiz has this poetry, he says, something missing in my heart tonight. Something missing in my heart tonight has made my eyes so soft, my voice so tender, my need for God absolutely clear. So this is a time when Islamic spiritual teachers say you begin to look at what is called the divine exchange. Letting go of the me, I, the attachment to the ego in favor of, in degrees, divinity, not your ego, to be the center of your life. It's a lifelong process. But Rumi has wonderful poetry. He says, Jamal, sell and buy at once. Sell and buy at once. Where will you find a market like this? For one little seed, the entire rose garden. For one little breath, the divine breath. Jamal, where will you find a customer like God who pays in gold? Who buys your counterfeit coins? Who buys your dirty, shabby bag of goods and in return gives a spiritual spring so delicious that even sugar is jealous of its sweetness. So sell and buy at once. That was the most important one, Islam itself. Okay, the second one is Iman, which means building faith. The Quran says, can you build faith in something higher than personality? Call it God, spirit. The second one in Islam is angels. Can you build faith in angels? Third one is all the prophets who came before Muhammad. Fourth one is all the holy books before Prophet Muhammad. And the fifth one is, please know you're accountable. What Buddhists and Hindus would call karma. You're accountable for your deeds. It has a consequence. So the whole idea is, can you move from what is called, quote unquote, borrowed certainty to an inner knowing? That's faith. Because the Quran says it cannot be by hearsay. So in the Quran it says the first stage is by hearsay. You hear somebody tell you, about faith. That's called ilm al-yaqeen. The Quran says move on to ayn. Ayn means eyes. Aynul yaqeen. Observe, experiment, learn through mistakes. The third one is called haqq al-yaqeen. Haqq means truth, the truth which emerges from within. So the most important point is it cannot be based on hearsay, this faith, whatever your faith is. It has to come eventually through your experience as you move from borrowed certainty to inner knowing. I want to tell you a very quick mullah story, teaching story. It has many levels of meaning. Somebody knocks on the mullah's door, and mullah opens the door. He's very happy. His friend has come with some wild ducks he has hunted in the wild. So together they make a large pot of soup. Very delicious soup, duck soup. But the second day, third day, there's always a knock on the door. I'm a friend of the friend of the friend who brought you those ducks. Oh, welcome, welcome, have some soup. On the 10th day, another knock. I'm the friend of the friend of the friend of the friend of the friend who brought you those ducks. By now, the mullah is angry. He goes to the kitchen and just gets some hot water. Places it before the guest. The guest is excited, takes a spoonful. He says, this is no duck soup. And the mullah says, no, this is the soup of the soup of the soup of the soup of the soup. But there's a deep meaning here. My beliefs, my faith is a soup of the soup of the soup of the soup of somebody's hearsay. So just ask yourself, what is the faith that I have within me? Okay, quickly. The third principle is ihsan, which means make yourself beautiful. Do this, what is called inconvenient inner work. You'll have to do it sooner or later. That's why we are here on this planet. Which means transforming my ego. Sufis say transform your ego from a commanding master into a personal assistant. Quran says, the word heart is mentioned in the Quran 132 times. And there's several verses that says, oh God, open for me my heart, open for me my heart, open my heart. Rumi has this beautiful verse. He says, open the window of your heart. Open the window of your heart. The moon will kiss you only through the window. But it's hard work. How hard is it? Another poetry. Take a pickaxe. Take a pickaxe and break open your stony heart. Take a pickaxe and break open your stony heart. The heart's matrix is glutted with rubies. Springs of laughter are buried in your chest, but you got to open it. Okay, now, what are the 5 pillars? The first pillar of Islam, a very important one, is La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. 2 parts. The first part is La ilaha illallah. There is no God but God. What does this mean? Again, very mysterious, but there are some Quranic verses that might elaborate, amplify, explain this verse. This is probably the most used and most sacred verse in Islam. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah. So one verse in the Quran says, if all the trees in this universe became pens, and all the 7 oceans became ink, and you began to write out the mysteries about God, the 7 oceans became depleted, you replenished them, you wouldn't come close to describing a fraction of the fraction of the fraction of God's mysteries. It's about God is mystery. Rumi, when he saw this verse and other things, he goes into a trance and he exclaims, sell your cleverness. Sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment. Another verse in the Quran says, every so way you turn is the face of Allah. The third one, maybe we'll end with that. The Quran says about God says, we are closer to you. We are closer to you than your jugular vein. Okay, the second part. Muhammadur Rasulullah, the most misunderstood verse in the West. Literally it means, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. Why is it misunderstood? Because most non-Muslims think the Quran is saying that only Muhammad is the prophet of God and he is the most important prophet of God. Both are incorrect. The Quran says in several verses, O Muhammad, there were many, many prophets before who came before you, and make no distinction between them. There is nothing new that is revealed to you that has not been revealed to other prophets. So Prophet Muhammad said, there were at least 100,000 prophets who came before me. The Quran mentions 25 prophets. Abraham in the Quran is called the friend of God. Moses is the most mentioned prophet in the Quran. He's called the voice through whom God spoke. Through whom God spoke. Jesus, and peace be upon all of them, is called the Spirit of God. Mary has an entire chapter in the Quran called Maryam. And there's far, far more about Mary in the Quran than all the Christian scriptures put together. Okay, moving on. The second pillar of Islam is prayers. Have you seen Muslims pray? Like this, this, and they'll prostrate on the floor. Every body movement has a meaning. So when the Muslim goes like this, when he stands in the direction of Mecca and goes like this, It means, for now, O God, as I stand in your presence, I am putting the world behind me. And I'm really listening. Then I go like this. And I'm mumbling something. What am I saying? It's mostly all praising God and thanking God. When I bow, I'm saying I am letting go of my ego. When I stand up, it's God speaking to me and saying, God loves those who praise Him. Then when I prostrate on the floor, that's called fana. Fana means, again, you completely let go of your ego. When you sit up, that's called baqa. That's what remains of you when your ego is completely gone. Anyway, this is repeated again. And towards the end, the Muslim goes to the right and says, peace and greetings be upon you. Goes to the left, peace and greetings be upon you. Who are they sending this message to, of peace and greetings? Do you know? To angels. Muslims believe whenever there's a space of purity, the angels. Right now, because of your blessed presence, this is actually a very full room filled with invisible angels. And if you listen carefully, Muslims say, you can begin to hear the rustling of wings. Okay, one quick story about the power, the majesty of prayer. It's a mullah story, allegorical. The mullah is in jail, in prison for life. But he's very happy now. Why? Because his teacher or sheikh has permission to visit him. Why is he happy? He's sure the teacher will slip in a key or a weapon to escape. The teacher comes, kisses him here, kisses him there, as is the custom, but gives him just a prayer rug. Have you seen prayer rugs, Muslim prayer rugs? A lousy prayer rug. Because the man is thinking, oh, what use is this to me? But he pretends he's very happy, and the teacher goes away. He has time on his hand. He's in prison for life. So he spreads out the prayer rug. He starts saying, Allahu Akbar. Oh God, you're the greatest of the greatest, the most compassionate of the compassionate. It doesn't mean a word. He bows, he prostrates. But as he continues this prostration, day after day, week after week, month after month, he looks carefully, he realizes there's a special design of an escape route from the prison. That's why Muslims say one prostration of prayer to God, one prostration of prayer to God liberates you, frees you from 1,000 prostrations to your ego. Okay, very quickly, third one, I'll move very fast. Time is moving. In the Quran, whenever there's a verse about prayer, it always has to be followed by a verse on service. So prayer really, or service really, is a form of the ultimate prayer. When Muslims pray, in what direction are they facing? The east, but towards something called the Kaaba. Have you seen pictures of this structure draped in black? So, in fact, Rumi's teacher, Shamd Tabriz, said, have you not noticed 24 hours a day, Muslims are praying all in a circle, almost you might say, in the globe, all bowing, praying, and prostrating to God in the direction of the Kaaba. He says, what happens if we take the Kaaba away? They're prostrating to one another. Meaning prayer, the core of prayer is to be of service to the other. That's why I love this poetry by Tagore, who's a Bengali, the first Asian to win the Nobel Prize in Literature. He says, or he wrote, I slept and dreamt, life was joy. I slept and dreamt, life was joy. I awoke and found life was service. I served, and lo, service was joy. Okay, moving on quickly. The fourth one is Ramadan. You've heard the word Ramadan. It means two things. One is the 9th month of the Islamic calendar. That month is called Ramadan. Ramadan also means the process, the practice of fasting from sunrise to sunset for a month, in that month. But why do Muslims fast in that month? Because it was in that month when Prophet Muhammad was meditating in the caves in Mecca for 40 days and nights. And he was 40 years old. He had this extraordinary, phenomenal experience. He was simply meditating in the cave. He saw this huge light approaching. And he became very scared, and the light announced itself as Angel Gabriel, and the light said, "Iqra, recite, say something." And he was so scared. Long story short, eventually he felt some great pain, and words of extraordinary beauty came out of his mouth. This happened for 23 years. And the collection of that is called what? The Qur'an. Qur'an means recitation. You might not like what the Qur'an says, but everybody agrees, academician who's a teacher of literature of Arabic studies, there is no literature in the Arabic world, Arabic literature, that comes remotely close to the beauty of the words of the Qur'an. So just as in Christianity, the miracle is Jesus is, peace be upon him, the Son of God, in Islam, the miracle is that the Quran's literature is unsurpassable. That's the miracle in Islam. So what I was trying to say is, to express gratitude for the gift of the Quran, the Muslims, they purify themselves by fasting in the month of Ramadan. Very quick story, and I'll end with just one more point. You know, there's a story of the mullah who has lost his donkey. That's a very big deal in that part of the world. The entire village tries to find the donkey. They cannot find the donkey. They come in the evening to give mullah the bad news. Where's the mullah? He's in the town square saying, "Allah, thank you, I'm so grateful." They say, "Mullah, you haven't heard the bad news. Your donkey is lost forever." He said, I know, but I'm so grateful because imagine what could have happened to me if I was on the donkey. The inner meaning is, if we give thanks even in times of affliction, you're giving thanks for unknown blessings already on their way. Okay, lastly, Hajj is the last one. It's really about community. We all need community. As Rumi says, please come out of the circle of time and enter the circle of love. A wall standing alone is useless. Add to it other walls, it can support a roof. Only when ink joins with a pen can the blank paper say something. Now I've got to end with a story from the mullah again. The mullah is in London Museum, and there's this very famous professor saying, this is 5,000 years old. Mullah says, excuse me, it's 5,004 years old. The guide is annoyed. This is 50,000 years old, approximately. Excuse me, it's 50,004 years old. Happened the third time. This is 75,000 years old. Excuse me, it's 75,004 years old. Now the guide is really annoyed. The guide says, sir, you have a turban, you have a beard. It tells me you come from the mysterious East. But how can you be so laser precise about those dates? Mullah says, simple. I was here 4 years ago. At that time, you mentioned those dates. Many meanings. One meaning is, Jamal, it's in your life, but now it's later than you think. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.